Happiness is the kind of thing that you're not going to find in the most obvious places. You're going to find it in the places that that kind of surprise you. Because it's the truth about life that the things that you need to find, you're going to find in the places that you least want to look. We talked in the first semester about childhood trauma. How do you overcome it? Well, you have to confront it first. You have to go looking in those dark places that you don't want to look. Also, by the way, you can't just focus on those negatives. We always talk about early childhood trauma, but didn't you have some good stuff happen to you as well when you were a kid? Think about those things. What were the things that made you happy when you were a little kid? And if you can figure out what those things are, you can start to figure out what kinds of things are going to make you happy when you're an older kid or an older adult. And so again, the things that you want to find, you're going to have to look in the places that you least want to look. So what's the connection between grateful and happy? Yeah, there is one. There is one. But my point to asking that is that we talk a lot about happiness, and it's a serious problem because many of us don't know even what it is, much less how to get it, and much less what it is that will bring this to us. Because we oftentimes think of we don't know what's going to give us happiness. That's a frightening thing. Think about the grammar of that sentence. What's going to give us happiness? What's being suggested there is that something is going to be given to us. It's not something that we can find inside of ourselves. It's something that we have to receive from something else. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that before we talked about a quote, I forgot which one, but then you were talking about happiness, and then you could have found happiness. You use the example of like someone just feeding pigeons back.
Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you said that you just found joy in feeding pigeons like breadcrumbs.
So yeah, Mike Tyson, feeding pigeons. If you'd asked 19-year-old Mike Tyson, who was, I think he was 20 when he won all three of the heavyweight titles of the world and unified them. I think he was one of the first guys to do it, one of 3 or 5 guys to do it. And he did it by the time he was 20 years old. If you'd asked that guy about what would make him happy when he was 40, he would never have said pigeons. This was a guy, he was 20 years old and he owned tigers and mansions and Bentleys and all that. This guy never would have said feeding pigeons, but something as simple as feeding pigeons. But that's also why he never would have noticed it, because 20-year-old Mike Tyson never would have taken time to feed pigeons. And so I think what you're going to find is that happiness is really hard to define. Like if I ask you what it is, really think about how you would define it. You say, well, happiness is like when you're happy. It's like asking what joy is. And happiness seems to be like a permanent state, whereas joy seems to be something that's very temporary. It passes. And joy is usually what it is that we feel when we're talking about happiness. Joy is a thing that comes and goes, it comes and goes, it comes and goes. Happiness is almost like a perpetual state. Like if you ask an old person if they've had a happy life, you can ask if they had a joyful life, and most people, not most, but many people have had joyful lives. They've had lots of moments of joy throughout it. But happiness, like I said, is this long-term state. And the two are distinct, happiness and joy. And so, you're right, it goes back to that thing of how is it that you find happiness? Well, that's what you do. You find it. And I guess the question becomes, where do you go looking for it? Well, if you go looking for it, it might be hard to find. Because if you're looking for it, you're probably going to look for it in the most obvious places. I remember that when I was a little kid, I would, if I would lose something, like a set of keys or whatever, I remember that I'd ask my dad to help me go find the keys. And he would go looking in the non-obvious places. And I would ask him, why don't you look in the obvious places? And he would say, I assume you've already looked in all the obvious places. And so I'd say, all right, well, let me go look so he'd go look in the less obvious places. So happiness is the kind of thing that you're not going to find in the most obvious places. You're going to find it in the places that kind of surprise you. Because it's the truth about life that the things that you need to find, you're going to find in the places that you least want to look. Like we've talked about, Like we talked in the first semester about like childhood trauma. How do you overcome it? Well, you have to confront it first. You have to go looking in those dark places that you don't want to look. They're uncomfortable places. This is what therapists will take you through. So what is it that you're looking for? So where is it that you're looking for happiness? Probably in some of those places, because in order to find it, if it's going to be a permanent state, we have to undo some of those things that we were talking about early on, about the trauma or the difficulties. But also, by the way, you can't just focus on those negatives. We always talk about early childhood trauma, but didn't you have some good stuff happen to you as well when you were a kid? Think about those things. What were the things that made you happy when you were a little kid? And if you can figure out what those things are, you can start to figure out what kinds of things are going to make you happy when you're an older kid or an older adult. Like Mike Tyson, like I said, going back to the pigeons, man, I wonder if this guy was a little kid, if this guy was feeding, I wonder if this guy was feeding animals when he was a little kid, and that made him happy. And then he became Mike Tyson, and then that whole idea was like, that doesn't interest me anymore. Well, now it might, when you're older, maybe going back to some of those things, because it isn't just about the pigeons, it's about something being nurturing. And that's a difficult thing for a 20-year-old Mike Tyson to admit to wanting to be, a nurturing character. And so again, the things that you want to find, you're going to have to look in the places that you least want to look. And then see what you find. Because as Viktor Frankl says, happiness is not something that can be pursued. The more you pursue it, you're going to look for it in the obvious places, man. Money, fame. And by the way, is there happiness to be found in money and fame? Probably. Probably, because, yeah. And I know it's the fashionable thing that, no, you don't find meaning there. I don't know, man. Some people seem very happy with it. Some people seem very miserable with it. It's going to be specific to you. Some people are psychologically equipped to handle fame. Some people are not psychologically equipped to handle fame. Can you imagine me as a famous person?
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I would be an even more terrible person. The world would be a far more terrible place than it is right now, just for having me in it like that. So maybe it's a good thing for me and the world to not attain that. But some of you, I imagine, maybe you would be some really nice, famous people. Maybe. Maybe. I hope so. If you do get there, I hope you're the kind of person who will make that world a better place and not a worse place. But, yeah, look in the places that you least want to look, not the obvious places. Don't look on the key ring for your keys, because that's probably the first place you looked. But happiness is not something you're going to find that you could pursue. It's something that has to ensue. It's the kind of thing where you're walking down the street one day and you've got a bagel, and then you toss the bagel to a bird, and it makes you happy. And you're like, that's so cool. The bird came over, shared it with the other birds. I'm going to feed birds again tomorrow. And you're going to find yourself like, I can't believe that made me happy. Some of you guys, fixing things might make you really happy. You might find that like fixing cars, fixing drains, fixing things around the house makes you happy because it gives you a sense of purpose and meaning. I have no idea what's going to make you happy. And the truth is that many of us don't know what's going to make us happy. What we do know is that if we don't have it right now, then we're looking in the wrong places, or at least we're pursuing in the wrong places. And so maybe we have to look in different places, or maybe we just have to live, experience life, do as many things as possible, and then find out what it is. Because happiness is the absence of striving for happiness. You're going to find it. The more that you're hyper-focused on it, the more miserable you're going to be. Like love. I may just have this idea, like, if I could just find someone to love, then my life would be so much better. Oh, you've never been in love before, have you? If that's your idea, then you probably haven't been in it. There's great feelings, but there's also a lot of responsibility that's associated with it. There's also a lot of heartbreak that can be associated with it. Sometimes the person you love is very difficult to love. Sometimes the person you love is very easy to love, and you stress to yourself how difficult it must be to love you. So the more hyper-focused you are on it, the more it seems to just slip away. So, especially when you're not finding it. And by the way, if you're striving for love, and you're not getting it, and it makes you unhappy, do you think that you're the kind of person other people want to be around? No. There's a reason you'll hear people say things like, man, as soon as I got into a relationship, I found out all kinds of people like me. Well, yeah, because you changed a little bit. You carry yourself differently. You're not striving for it. And because you're not striving for it, you come off as more approachable. People will like you more. And so, how do you replicate that? You replicate that by being that, even when you're not looking for love, even when you are looking for love. Man, there's 7 billion people on this planet. If you guys walk around campus, just look at some of the couples. That should reinforce to you that there's someone for everyone. There really is, man. And I know you might think like, but how come I can't find? Maybe because you're striving. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?